Let's move on to our speaker of the evening. You know her, you love her, Alice Linahan.
Has this group, when was that we started it? 2009?
2009.
After all of these years, it is good to see familiar faces and that there are people who are still in the fight. And even though it seems as it's gotten worse and worse and worse, many of us who knew what was happening back then knew it was going to get worse and worse and worse. And I have hope in that I do believe it is getting to the point where it is so in our face. And people who, family, friends who thought that I was just a political nut so many years ago now actually come to my Facebook page for their news and information. So we do have the power. We have the power because we're still coming to these meetings. We have the power because we built networks across the state. We built networks across the country. And now it's our time to stand up. The issue that I have become passionate about, many of you know, is education. And I'm not going to talk a lot tonight because I've been here several times. Everyone knows I'm against Common Core. Everyone should know that Common Core is in Texas. They just call it College and Career Ready. It is a global program. It's not something that started in the United States. It is a global project, a global campaign, and I want to share videos with you tonight and try to tell you the story of what's happening. And you mentioned that the people that were there last night were half your age. They were the young people. I want to show you a video. Let me go here. Of a young person who is describing education reform. And I want you to know that education reform, the education reformers here in Texas are the Thomas Ratliffs of the world, who many of you know I have been in battles with for years. TASA, the Texas Association of School Administrators, TASB, the Texas Association of School Board. They are all education reformers. They are pushing this global education reform through our traditional public schools and through charter schools. But unfortunately, Dan Patrick is a global education reformer. Greg Abbott is a global education reformer. Those people who are pushing school choice, the people that are the faces of school choice in Texas, who are advising Governor Abbott and Greg Patrick, a woman named Stacy Hawk, who some of you may know. She's a prominent philanthropist. She and her husband made a lot of money. Her husband, his software company that he worked for is in the gaming, education gaming, online digital learning. They will profit. They are hedge fund people. So education reformers, whether they're on the right or the left, have an end goal, and it's online digital personalized learning. And what the result of that will be is our children will no longer be Texans. That kid from Argyle, Texas that was on the baseball team, or Colleyville that was on sports team, who's a Texan, who lives in a global economy. They will now be a global citizen who happens to live in Texas. And if you think I'm kidding, just listen to this. Do I have to push something on here to get it to go? Oh, there we go.
Moving right along, let's welcome Olivia, giving her speech on education reform.
Meet Jane. Jane has taken many AP courses throughout her high school career, and she's set to graduate somewhere near the top of her class. She's enrolled in a competitive college, and you'd probably call her the ideal student. Now, meet Jack. Jack did not take all the rigorous AP courses that Jane did, rather he focused on a few that he found fascinating. While he did not necessarily excel in school, he read the newspaper to keep up with the world, and he enjoyed reading about things that he found interesting. Rather than go to college next year like Jane, Jack's parents have agreed to let him take a gap year to gain experience and perspective before another 4 years of classroom study. But is Jack or is Jane more prepared to face our globalized world? Because we are living in a globalized world. Advances in technology have given us the ability to share information around the globe in real time. No longer are we isolated. Events occurring in Europe or Africa are of global significance. The job market is becoming increasingly international, demonstrating a need to hire students, young adults equipped with knowledge and skills that extend beyond classroom walls. The world is changing, and our schools must change as well. In November, there will be a presidential election. Regardless of whether or not you are eligible to vote, knowledge of these issues at hand is crucial because they will shape our future. However, these issues aren't really discussed among us and hardly ever in our classrooms. I know a freshman in high school who, despite the fact that she is very smart, still does not understand the basic concepts between Democrats and Republicans. This was evident by the fact that she asked me, "Is Trump a Democrat?" This is not uncommon, and it reveals a flaw in our education system. American students are in school, on average, between 6 and 7 hours a day, and during this time, we're confined by a narrow curriculum that places emphasis on the wrong areas. There's a distinct difference between the development of skills and of fact-based knowledge. Students cram and memorize countless facts, but can they actually apply them? Unfortunately, there are factors such as strict AP curricula and state laws that limit teachers' abilities to shape courses in a relevant way. For example, a New Jersey state core curriculum standard dictates that before graduation, a high school student must take 2 years of U.S. history. This requirement is nationalistic and redundant. Unless U.S. history is going to be integrated into other areas and taught in a way that connects it to current events, spending 2 years studying the history of the U.S. alone is not preparing us for a global future. In place of one of these courses, perhaps we should have broader humanities such as international affairs or world history. That would be a staple instead. AP courses are also a part of the problem. These courses are designed with strict curricula, and the teacher has to teach the test. Oftentimes, students are taking these courses just so that they can have another course in their transcript with 2 letters in front of it. There's no reason that students shouldn't be able to take courses that are equally as rigorous without the confining syllabus and the pressurized exam at the end of the year. We must also rethink the way we approach education. Currently, students are often told from the beginning of high school by their parents, teachers, guidance counselors that they must take the most rigorous courses possible to give them the best chance they have of getting into their dream college. This is why students who favor the humanities oftentimes end up taking AP Calculus and AP Physics when 20 years ago that probably would not have been a requirement. High school shouldn't be a game students have to play to get into college. It should be a time to explore ideas and acquire skills and gain knowledge of the world around us. Let's return briefly to Jack and Jane. Jane, despite the fact that she had a resume packed with rigorous courses and high grades, was not as knowledgeable of the world around her when she entered college as was Jack, who had taken a gap year to gain experience and perspective. How then do we take Jack's lessons and experiences and integrate them into our classrooms so that they're available to everyone? Well, our education system must undergo serious reform. And this reform demands the attention of our government, but also of our individual schools. Schools could offer world culture classes and increase the interdisciplinary connections so that perhaps students learn to take the analytical writing skills they've learned in English class and apply them to their lab write-ups in physics, or that the algebra they've been using has its origins in ancient Babylon. If schools allotted just 20 minutes a day to reading and discussing newsworthy events, then students would be able to keep up with current events and become more globally aware. We have so much modern technology, and we should be using it to collaborate with schools abroad, giving us a chance to work across cultures. It is these small changes that will begin to make a difference, at least until larger reform is able to take effect. Most immediately, however, there must be a shift in the way we view education. Currently, we feel as if we need A's and APs. We need high test scores. We need the transcript we all think we need to get into college. But I want an education. I want skills that will apply to the real world. I want knowledge of the world around me, and I want to be able to leave school each day knowing that I am being prepared for my future in a globalized world. One school at a time, one class at a time, one teacher and one student at a time, our education system must be revitalized from the inside out. And together, we can do this by embracing our global world and by aligning our education with our future. Thank you.
If you go on to any school district in the state of Texas and look at their mission statement, I guarantee you it will say a global citizen, a global mind. TASA's new vision for public education was not something that just came out of the 28 superintendents that put TASA's new vision together. This was a program that has been very well organized and has been in the works for a long time. The Equity in Education Plan, and I say that, equity in education. In the past, in the United States, we had an education of opportunity, equal opportunity. I don't care if you're a rich kid, a poor kid, a black kid, a white kid. If you learn how to read well, write well, do math, and you knew history, you had an equal opportunity at life in the United States. And you could fail, learn from that failure, and come back and still have an opportunity. What happens when you have equity in education, what they're talking about is equal outcomes, not equal opportunity. And this plan was a very well thought out plan. Charter schools replace public schools. Charter schools are public schools. The difference between a traditional public school and a charter school is a locally elected school board. This is a revolution through education. Revolution meaning changing our form of government from a constitutional republic to a democracy. And our forefathers warned us against a democracy because the difference or the result of a democracy is mob rule, which is exactly what they were trying to do last night. So it is a revolution through education. Charter schools replace public schools. Everyone has federal Title I choice funds that go to any school, charter, private, or religious. We hear our conservative Republicans saying the money has to follow the child because we want parental choice. No, this is part of the plan. When the money follows the child, so do the mandates for those child to be under the college and career ready federal standards that have now been put into law, codified into law through the passage, which was the reauthorization of the elementary and secondary education bill that was passed in 1965. That was the first time that federal dollars went from Washington back to the state through Title I money for children who are economically disadvantaged. That was the first time the federal government had control over us, and it was through the funds. So when the money follows the child, and I hate to tell you this because I've had this conversation with Ted Cruz's policy people in Washington, D.C., and I argued with them, and I said, no, you cannot, that is unconstitutional, isn't it? Unconstitutional.
Where in the Constitution does federal money go to education to begin with?
Exactly.
No matter public or private.
Exactly. It's not there. So when the money follows the child, so do the mandates, because the funding comes in. Now everyone says, oh, but let's get rid of the Department of Education and we'll fix it. Just collapse the Department of Education. It doesn't matter, because they've also passed WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which actually brings federal funds into the state, bringing in those mandates under the Department of Labor, Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Defense, and Department of Education. So you can eliminate the Department of Education, but those mandates that are coming in are coming in through other funding sources. So everyone has Title I funds. Every child is taught the same standards, college and career ready standards. Each teacher must teach the same standards, college and career ready standards. The teachers' standards, the way that teachers are being evaluated, that the copyright, you never hear about those, the copyright of those standards. They're also owned by the Council of Chief State School Officers, which is the same nonprofit trade organization that owns the Common Core national standards, which Texas's college and career ready standards are aligned with those Common Core standards. Every test must align with these standards. Everyone is saying, get rid of that STAR test, get rid of that test. We have to quit teaching to the test. Well, I would agree that the STAR test is not a valid test. It's not testing whether our children know how to do 2 + 2 is 4. It's an invalid test. But I can tell you what's coming next. They have created the problem so that they can come in to fix it. And so it's set up to fail, and I'll show you in a second, so they can come in to fix it. And the next generation of assessments and accountability are the #1 recommendation that that commission gave to our Texas legislature is online digital learning, assessments, and instruction. So it's no longer an end of course test. Does my child know how to do math or how to do English? It is a daily assessment where the computer program is adaptive. And so parents, and even the teacher, is completely out of the picture. So what's coming next in Texas is very dangerous. Curriculum and software is aligned to these standards. Everything listed here is aligned to government data collection. On September 20th, I am involved with a national initiative that is being launched by Anita Hogue. She is a mother who, back in the 90s, sued the state of Pennsylvania. Took her 4 years, but she sued the state for doing psychological assessments on her children, on her son, and she won. But they've come back, and that's what they are doing. The late Phyllis Schlafly knew exactly what was going on here, and she wrote a book in 1984. It was called Child Abuse in the Classroom. And she was very instrumental. This book is all of the testimony and the documentation when they put forth the Hatch Amendment, which was the Privacy Act for pupils. This has been decimated our children's privacy, and I am all for the privacy bill, the bathroom bill. I think the reason why we have to have that though is because we've allowed for the shift in education to be away from reading, writing, math, and history to attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. And that's why we're having to fight that battle. But when we talk about privacy for our children, my children are in danger in the bathroom because of a pedophile or someone coming in. But my child is in just as much danger by what the conservative Republicans and Democrats, all of them in Austin and in Washington, are completely violating the privacy of my children by allowing their data to be collected for these software companies to use to create programs to modify my children's attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. So if we're going to talk about privacy, let's talk about the data and the private data on my children and your grandchildren that we are allowing for our elected officials to take because of their public-private partnerships. And so on September 20th, I will be with this group of people that will be having a press conference, and we're basing this on Phyllis Schlafly's work, and we want to force the Trump administration, Betsy DeVos, the Secretary of Education, to look at the privacy of our children and shut down these longitudinal database systems. In Texas, when No Child Left Behind was put into place in 2001, the longitudinal database systems were set up. It's illegal to have a national database system on our children. So what they did is they have 50 separate database systems. So they've been collecting. In the stimulus package in 2009, that database system was upgraded. Texas took $18+ million from the federal government to update that database system. In 2011, Obama, he didn't change the law, but he changed the regulation on the FERPA law, which is the Family Rights and Protection Act. And when any school district, they'll say, oh, well, we're aligned to FERPA, your students' privacy is fine. That's bunk. Because what the new regulation is that our children's data and their teachers' data can be collected without consent in the name of education research, which has opened up Pandora's box. This is a $800 billion global industry. And whether it's Thomas Ratliff and his ties to Microsoft wanting access to that global industry, or it's Dan Patrick and Stacey Hawk and Greg Abbott, they want access into that global industry. Now I want to show another video. This is a 4-minute video. This is by a mom like myself, Allison McDowell, and I highly recommend. This is a quick overview, but she really puts into perspective what the end game is on all of this. McDowell, M-C-D-O-W-E-L-L, I believe. And her website is wrenchinthegears.com.
That I gave on January 3rd, 2017. It is available for viewing on YouTube. This is an abbreviated version of a 1-hour talk, Ed Reform 2.0, Personalized Learning in Orwellian Times, that I gave on January 3rd, 2017. It is available for viewing on YouTube. New means of privatizing public education are being put into place nationwide, and most people have no idea. I hope this video gives you a framework for identifying red flags in your own community. Neighborhood schools are not simply bricks and mortar structures. They are community anchors. They hold our memories, They represent the collective experience of generations of students that walk their halls. We grow up in schools. They hold our exhilaration, our fears, our accomplishments, and our failures. Schools shape the people we become in ways great and small. Public schools serve all children, regardless of the challenges they bring with them each day. Teachers and administrators step up to meet their needs in a way that is deeply human, in ways no virtual tutor ever could. Austerity and market-driven policies have resulted in tablets and Chromebooks gradually replacing face-to-face instruction in many schools. Hybrid or blended learning is pitched as high-tech, but in reality it diminishes the time children have to learn in relationship to one another, and the amount of data being collected on children through these devices has grown exponentially. Things most adults grew up having in schools, art, music, libraries, clubs, and tutoring, are now often outsourced to community partners under the guise of out-of-school time learning. Through the adoption of credit flexibility and seat time waiver laws, education is incrementally being detached from physical school buildings. You'll soon be hearing a lot about the importance of any time, any place, any path, any pace learning, and learning ecosystems. Students can hack their education and get credit for many out-of-school time ELOs or extended learning opportunities. Schools and teachers are no longer required. In 1 year, the state budget doesn't get passed, and the community partnerships are in place, and everyone has home broadband access, and the charters have extracted as much value as they could from the system. And on that day, the bricks and mortar schools will be deemed expendable and shuttered. High school students will get a Chromebook and an assigned pathway designer, and the young children will be shuttled over to the Boys and Girls Club chapter or some other nonprofit willing to step up for the kids as long as they can access ESA funds and social impact investments. Of course, once they take the funds, they too will become accountable and required to participate in the data stream, just as the schools were when they were operating. They'll pitch this new version of education as a personalized pathway, but don't be fooled. It's a slog that will force children to navigate a complex bureaucratic system, gathering skills and competencies for a set career that may not even exist a decade hence. And while they're collecting badges, they'll be monitored in excruciating detail, not only for what they know, but for what kind of people they are. Gritty or not, enthusiastic or not, leadership material or not. Community-based learning and makerspaces may sound cool, but in the end, they are drop-in centers. They don't have the capacity to truly nurture children. Schools nurture children. Pathway designers and data dashboard monitors don't change lives. Teachers do. Coaches do. Principals do. Hold on to that and be prepared to fight for it. Our schools need us. Here are a few things that you can do to help. First, recognize the danger and then educate yourself and others. Ask questions, lots of them, and ask them publicly. Opt out of data collection. Refuse to collect this data. We all need to organize resistance to automated teaching, virtual schooling, and badging. For more information and links to resources, go to wrenchinthegears.com.
And if you think this isn't happening in Texas, I hate to tell you, but our new Commissioner of Education, he's actually been on the job since 2016. He's a gentleman named Mike Morath. His background is supposedly he's a software entrepreneur. He was on the Dallas ISD school board. He was a big part of, and you may have heard when Dallas was trying to do the home rule, where they were trying to take over Dallas ISD. That was Mike Morath who was doing that. Now, what's very scary about Mike Morath is he has no education experience. He hasn't been a teacher. He doesn't know about, how veteran teachers teach math in the classroom. He's a 30-something-year-old who's trying to make money, in my opinion. He's a yes man. And it's interesting because he has restructured the Texas Education Agency. And he has these 5 deputies. 3 of them are former Teach for America leaders. The deputy of governance is a guy named A.J. Crable, who actually had to change his name. He came from Kansas City. He's the deputy of governance. He's making $180+ a year. His highest attainment of education is a high school diploma. But he's a leader. He's also a community organizer, and he was the treasurer of the Democrat Party in Kansas City. He has ethics charges filed against him. And yet, I testified, Charlie Garza testified, other parents showed up and testified at his nomination committee hearing where Brian Birdwell was the chairman of it. Van Taylor was on there. We had documentation and documentation. He was appointed, Mike Morath was appointed overwhelmingly by the Texas Senate. Why? That doesn't make sense. I'll show you why. Listen to a bill that was presented by Tan Parker this session, HB 2014, and listen to the conversation. It's a bill to put in place math innovation zones for, we want to have property tax reform, and this HB 21 that they just passed in the special session, everybody says that they want property tax reform, get rid of the property taxes. There was a commission in that bill, a committee put in, to look at new ways of financing public education. You want to know how they're going to finance it? It's not going to be about local control. Listen to Tan Parker and Mike Morath.
Consider House Bill 2014 by Chairman Parker. The Chair lays out House Bill 2014. The Chair recognizes Chairman Parker to explain the measure.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you so much for your time. I know you're all in the midst of a busy day, and I appreciate your patience in allowing me to bring a couple of bills for you today. I'm first going to obviously talk about House Bill 2014, and I want to thank our TEA Commissioner Mike Morath for not only the concept of this bill, but for taking on the inspiration for legislation I passed last session called Pay for Success that I championed back in the 2015 session. Texas must vastly improve the mathematical reasoning skills of its students to ensure the continued growth of the Texas economy. Students do not develop strong mathematical skills when they move too quickly with inadequate practice, and unfortunately, some students are being lost in the traditional classroom style of teaching. I don't expect every math teacher to adopt different methods of instruction for every struggling student, but I do believe that programs that focus on individual needs can and should be adopted. The implementation of math innovation zones and select public school and open enrollment charter school campuses across Texas has only brought more evidence to the table of just how effective, highly individualized, self-paced math lessons really are in improving a student's understanding of this complex subject. Unfortunately, few schools in Texas have been able to develop creative programs such as the Math Innovation Zones program due to the deterrence of startup costs. It is crucial that more school campuses across the state adopt programs that focus on ensuring that students are not only increasing their understanding of fundamental math, but retaining that knowledge as well. That is why I've authored this House Bill 2014. This legislation proposes that upon application of a K-8 school district or upon an open enrollment charter school, grants specified for the purpose of math innovation zones should be utilized to implement relevant programs within that school district. Grants shall be awarded at the discretion of the Commissioner of the TEA. Schools, though exempt from the state accountability system for the first 2 years of program adoption, will be monitored by TEA to ensure that the district is implementing the program with fidelity. Along with grants for math innovation zones, this legislation will allow for pay-for-success programs. The pay-for-success programs will be financed by private parties and awarded to school districts that have achieved specified measurable outcomes. I fully agree that the Texas House has done its very best to appropriate funds for education. However, the reality is that there is still unmet need. Allowing private parties to invest in education is not only important, it's a critical ingredient in cultivating greater education breakthroughs. With that, members, I conclude my formal remarks. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I know there's probably a couple of good witnesses today as well.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, are there any questions? All right, Chairman, we'll reserve your right to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, members. Mike Morath, Texas Education Agency. I'm simply here as a resource if there are questions related to the bill. The bill, as you know, sets up a concept where the agency will support districts iterating through a re-engineered mathematics classroom experience for students, which we believe will deliver substantially higher levels of achievement, both in math that year as well as leading to algebra readiness. And the bill really has two components. One is the Math Innovation Zone sort of authorization itself, and other is a mechanism, an innovative mechanism to support possible scaled financing at very reduced cost to the state. So, again, just happy to answer questions about it.
All right. Member, thank you. Commissioner, any questions? Representative Coop.
Commissioner, so can you walk through how you have contemplated the financing mechanism to work?
Absolutely. So the concept is, sure. So I had to run over here from our office building. The concept is basically what we would first go through is an RFQ process as an agency to ask for any and all blended learning systems providers to respond to an RFQ to be admitted into the sort of complement of choices that districts could offer under the Math Innovation Zones program. In order to respond and be awarded entrance into the RFQ, you have to demonstrate two things. One is that you have to demonstrate that you have the ability to measure implementation, the way the system actually works. So you can think, say, hours the students are online, the milestones that they go through, the degree of efficacy that teachers have in terms of training and support systems for it. So you have to have some mechanism to evaluate implementation fidelity. The second thing that you have to have is a demonstration that at high levels of implementation, that achievement scores go up, math achievement scores go up. And any respondent that meets those two criteria will then be eligible to be chosen by school districts. We wouldn't actually provide funding directly to the math systems providers. We would provide grant funding to agents or to school districts to purchase the software or to buy hardware or to pay for the sort of administrative changes that need to be paid for in order to implement it. But what we would do is facilitate sort of a pay-for-success structure and financing if a district wanted to do that. And the way that these would work is sort of an outside investor would evaluate the efficacy of the blended learning system, the mathematics system, and if they believe that high levels of implementation result in high levels of achievement, what they would then do is essentially provide a working capital loan, as it were, to school districts to pay for the system, so the school districts can do this without spending any money out of pocket. Then if the school district achieves high levels of STAR achievement gains, then they pay the working capital loan back. If math scores don't go up, then the school districts don't pay the loan back. And so the private outside investors are essentially, they're investing in the quality of the program at high levels of implementation. And so the school districts will have to commit to high levels of implementation. If they don't, those working capital loans would be repaid immediately. That's essentially the hitch. The school districts have to implement high quality. If they do, they can implement essentially for free for a few years and then pay it back if it works.
So do you expect that the investors will become sort of like venture capitalists?
So there's a relatively small market globally for these kinds of pay for success programs. There's a program in Salt Lake, several in New York, a lot in the UK. There are, believe it or not, people who have a social investment focus, and they're willing to take calculated risks in order to accomplish social goods.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members, again, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, allowing me to lay out this good bill. I appreciate the testimony, obviously, that you just heard from our great commissioner and from our distinguished professor from Rice University. I'm going to make one other comment, Representative Coop, pertaining to the method of finance these innovation funds. It's really also referred to as social impact bond investing. We call it pay for success. But typically, it's large investment banks, wealthy family offices, those types of individuals around the world that participate in these kinds of things for the good of society. And I saw that as availability, and I wanted us in Texas to be able to access that. So I passed a bill last session that enables any of our agencies to have access. And so now, just to connect the dots, the commissioner now sees the opportunity to utilize it here with regard to improving mathematical education in Texas.
Representative.
Sure. So it's sort of like a lot of these wealthy investors put their money into a foundation that in turn, invest in the community in some aspect similar to that.
Yes, ma'am.
In this case, they could get a return on their investment.
Absolutely.
Oh, there you go.
So, as a mom with children who've been in the public schools in Texas and know that the math standards that were put in place in 2012 that are aligned to the Common Core math standards, which I'm trying to think of his name, sorry, it's losing my head. The man who, Jim Milgram, who was appointed to validate the Common Core math standards and refused to because he said it would put our children behind 2 to 3 years in math. He's the same man that testified in November in front of the Texas State Board of Education saying that our math standards, our Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills math standards are actually worse than the Common Core, and that children who are in this type of math program for more than 4 years will never recover. But yet the Texas State Board of Education did nothing. Pat Hardy did nothing. But yet this is going to be the solution. I'll end with this, and I'm happy to take any questions. This is Mike Morath. He is a young 30-something-year-old. He's involved with shifting our education away from teaching reading, writing, math, and history to attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors, which is exactly why we need the bathroom bill. But listen to what he had to say at the next generation of assessments and accountability, that we needed to put in new Texas standards that were not academic knowledge-based, but that were character standards. And if they have standards in place, they've got to test them to make sure those standards are being met.
There's this growing body of research related to what are sometimes referred to as non-cognitive skills. Soft skills is a term for them. I personally sort of call them character skills without the moral overtones. It's just sort of hard work and enthusiasm.
Show up to win.
That's right. And KIPP actually has these built into their curriculum on a formalized basis. Austin ISD does it, and they don't call it either soft skills or character skills. In Austin, they use the term social emotional skills. And when I think about these, this is the career skills that it is in fact possible to formulate standards around, but we in Texas have not done it. This would be the area of greatest weakness, I think, in the formal curriculum standards, is we haven't actually put this in there. And so things like enthusiasm, things like grit or perseverance, optimism, gratitude, which is really the opposite of this entitlement mentality that can be so corrosive to the spirit, or empathy and social intelligence. These are skills that are actually, when you think about the sort of line blending between college and career, it's definitely blurring, but these are very much career-related skills that we would be wise to reinforce formally in our school system from the bedrock of the standards that exist. And there are states, in fact, that have done this, that have built out a standards framework in these non-cognitive skill sets. So it's certainly something, I think, for us to consider, for y'all to consider as policymakers, as to whether or not that is a wise path forward. Thank you.
Which happens to align with what Representative Tim Ryan stated on the floor of the U.S. Congress when they were passing the Every Student Succeeds Act, which are the same standards. And when I asked Senator Larry Taylor down in Austin when I was testifying, why are we in Texas aligning our Texas standards to the federal mandates in the Every Student Succeeds Act? And he said, so we can get the money.
I believe this bill helps us get back to redefining what the Common Core is. And in my estimation, the Common Core is, are we teaching kids mental discipline? The ability to be aware, the ability to be focused, the ability to cultivate one of the key components to a successful life, and that's the ability to regulate your own emotional state. This comes well before science, technology, engineering, and math. Teaching these key fundamental characteristics, mental discipline, physical discipline, focus, concentration, self-regulation, key components before you even get to the academic side, that I believe there is a new way of educating our kids emerging here. There's a new Common Core developing, and that's the mental discipline and the physical health of our young people. I yield back.
So there's a reason why they needed to shift away from academics to attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. There's a reason why there's a set of college and career-ready standards. And the end game is online digital learning. It's a global shift. It's to access American children, our children, to be a part of this global economy. The immigration battles that we're having, that y'all were talking about, they mean nothing if we are just a global world that has American citizens. And who's going to be profiting off of this? How many of you, I want to show you, this is the last clip, I promise, but this is a movie on Netflix. Let me show you the clip first and then I'll talk about it. This is short.
Michael, how are you?
I found something really interesting.
The whole housing market is propped up on these bad loans. They will fail. The housing market is rock solid. It's a time bomb. So Mike Burry, who gets his hair cut supercuts and doesn't wear shoes, knows more than Alan Greenspan. Dr. Mike Burry, yes he does.
You know what? I'm pissed off. American people are getting screwed by the big banks. And I'm getting madder and madder.
It's unbelievable.
Then this guy walks into my office and says,
there's some shady stuff going down. All the banks are having a big old party. A few outsiders saw what no one else could. The whole world economy might collapse.
I'm sure the world's banks have more incentives than greed.
You're wrong. No one's paying attention.
the banks got greedy and making profit off of their stupidity. You want to bet against the banks?
I think we're either high or having a stroke. Kind of brilliant.
Fraud has never ever worked. Eventually, things go south. When the hell did we forget all that?
How come the banks let this happen? It's fueled by stupidity.
That's not stupidity, that's fraud.
Tell me the difference between stupid and illegal, and I'll have my wife's brother arrested.
You have any idea what you just did? You just bet against the American economy.
If you're wrong, you can lose it all. The banks have defrauded the American people. Now we can kick them in the teeth.
Okay, here we go. You target strippers with bad loans.
And all cash rich.
You're not going to be able to refinance.
On all my loans,
What do you mean all your loans?
I have 5 houses and a condo.
I highly recommend you go and watch The Big Short on Netflix. And I want you to watch it and think in terms, the commodity in The Big Short was houses. When the housing market failed and it went bust, people just walked out of their homes. They didn't care about their homes. They stripped them, they took everything they could, and they left them. It meant nothing. The billionaires of the world have now put their money into the education global market. And what they're doing, their commodity now is our children's data. And our children, for these math innovation zones. My question is, if it fails, what are we going to do with those children? The commodity that's destroyed. That's my kid. These experiments that they're doing, that's my kid. That's your kid. They will never get these years back. How dare they? How dare they use our children for profit? All of the research shows the danger of this constant online digital learning on our children. You want to know why suicides are going up? You want to know why Leander ISD had 5 suicides last year? When our children are not allowed to be children, when our children are hooked up to iPads in kindergarten, when our children are taught in high school or are there, they spend their time. My daughter came home and she was upset one day and I said, "What's wrong, honey?" And she goes, "I spent the whole day debating about abortion, debating about all of these issues, these real-time issues. They're just not able to be kids." This is what they're taking from our children. And I'm sorry, but my children are not a commodity for the state or the federal government. And I am willing to fight for my children's future because my children are not global citizens who happen to live in America. My children are Texans.
Questions? Nothing loud. Just raise your hand or shout it out, whatever you want to do. Testing, testing. There we go. All the way in the back. What's the plan?
Good. And I'm glad you asked that, because, and as conservatives, we have got to understand the big picture so that when they're pushing school choice that we're not buying it. Because that ESA, Education Savings Account, the school choice is an access point. They need access. I have now pulled my youngest out, and I'm homeschooling, and I encourage people to do that. But if I take that Education Savings Account money, I'm now putting my child back in the system. And actually what's going to eventually happen, if we keep buying the BS that they're giving us, as a parent, they're limiting my freedom and my choice. Because if I pull my kid out and I'm homeschooling, my children are not going to have the badges and the credentials to get a job in the future. So the solutions are not to buy the BS that the conservative Republicans are giving us. Some of them just don't know. They don't know. And when they have people like Stacey Hawk and you know, when you have organizations like TPPF and Empower Texans, who I know those people, and they're good people. Some know and some don't know, and some are so far in it, it's hard to get out. So people like us who've been in this battle, who know the people in those organizations, we've got to explain it, and we've got to hold them accountable and speak out publicly, just like I'm doing tonight. Parents, and parents who have children in the public school, in the charter school, in the private school, use your rights and say no. Opt your kid out. Don't give them the data. Opt your kid. It's hard. My daughter was the only senior at Argyle High School that didn't have a Chromebook. And it forced the teachers, she had to write. It was actually really good for her. It prepared her more. So as parents, for a solution, whether you're homeschooling, understand the big picture, don't take money that's offered to you. If your children are in the public schools or in the charter schools, opt out of the data. Join me and Anita Hogue and demand on September 20th that we force Trump, and we force, frankly, our Texas legislators. I'm reaching out to them now. I am trying to invite them to this press conference to help us to stop the longitudinal database system. I'm telling you, it's not going to be easy because they're dependent on it. But they know it. They know that this huge amounts of data are being collected. They know it. So we need conservative Republicans to stand with us to actually not only protect our children's privacy in the bathroom, but protect our children's privacy in the classroom. I put a graphic out. Great. In Texas, we protect our children in the womb, but protect them in the classroom too. And we need Bill Zedler. We need Brian Birdwell. We need Bob Hall. We need these people that we worked really hard to put into office to stand with us and understand with the school choice and charter schools. HB 21, when the Senate version that went back, that was passed this week, had $60 million for charter schools. They're going to collapse our traditional public schools. We need to fight for our public schools that have locally elected school boards. We need to put people on those locally elected school boards that will fight and say no. Don't pass the bonds where you're paying, $2 million for one-to-one iPads that you're financing over 30 years. That's what Argyle did. So when you're talking about solutions, number one, educate parents to fight back and not give the data. Number two, educate our legislators, get them to join with us. And we've got attorneys, we've got some people that are looking at this. We're threatening lawsuits. This is not just an initiative to make a stink. We've got people willing to stand up and file lawsuits against the state, against the federal government to protect our children's privacy. Because this is so far gone that if we don't step up, we didn't elect Trump to fix and make America great. We elected Trump to give us the environment for us to make America great. And that's what we have to do, is step up and do it ourselves. I think someone else had a question.
Is there a question?
Yes. Yes.
The online schools that you hear on the radio, they are part of this?
Yes.
Like
The virtual schools.
Virtual schools?
Yes. These companies, the data is the commodity. And so whether, and I know I'm going to tick off people, whether it's a K-12 school that Bill Bennett is put in or Dennis Prager, they see the profit that can be made from this. And that's when I was trying to get the word out about Common Core and going on WBAP, and I would get shut down all the time. They knew where this was going. Bill Bennett knew where this was going. Jeb Bush knows where this is going.
My question,
Oh.
My question is, are you a precinct chairwoman?
No.
Okay, because I was going to ask, have you addressed this problem for the Republican Party around using your? Well, it's something. I mean, you could say that her standing up in front of here is not doing any good either, but I mean, it's an avenue. That's why.
It is an avenue, and it's an avenue, and I guess what my goal is to educate those people. The school choice that Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott are pushing does not align with the Republican Party platform. It does not, because in that platform, parental rights is what that platform talks about. And we already have school choice in the state of Texas. As a parent, I have full freedom to choose to pull my kids out and homeschool. I have complete freedom to pay for a private school. I have complete freedom to send my kids to a public school. And even if I don't like that public school, I have the freedom to move to another public school in another district. We have school choice. As a parent, when you think about that Republican Party platform and parental rights, as a mother, I don't get the right to choose my children's location of education or how they are educated from the state or federal government. That is a natural, inalienable right that I have been given by God. So to buy in that I need the state to write legislation to regulate my choices, I'm actually handing my rights over to the state. It's limiting my options. And actually, I have no options because all those, I may have a choice in location, but I don't have a choice in the system that's been put in place to have my child not be under the college and career ready federal standards of ESSA.
There we go. Well, I think we're a few minutes over time.
Sorry.
Can you get, oh, that's great. I think it was great information. Wasn't it great?
A little
Great
excited about
information.
that.
Very passionate as well. Maybe we could just quickly wrap up, maybe how they connect with you or anything
Yes.
else you want us to know, and then we'll close it out.
Every Wednesday night, we have a conference call, and you can just call in. You can go to register for that conference call at womenonthewall.org. Next Wednesday, we will have Anita Hogue on that call, who sued the state of Pennsylvania and won, to talk more about this child abuse in the classroom project. So I encourage you on Wednesday nights to join us. It's at 8:30 p.m. and we try to stop it at an hour. The conference call I had 2 weeks ago was with Mark Hall of Killing Ed, and I know you guys have had him here. He needs help in getting Killing Ed out there to our elected officials who are ignoring him. So that, I just want to give him a plug too. The other place that you can go is voicesempower.com. That's my own blog or website. You can go find a lot of information there. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity for coming back tonight. I think that this is important, and I'm willing to stand, and I know you guys are fighters too, so thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I believe we will wrap with that. Alice may be here for a few minutes if you want to have a quick conversation with her or so, but for the most part, we are good for this evening. Third Thursday next month will be our next meeting. We've got some great speakers lined up. Look for that information on Facebook. We'll announce that here shortly. But with that, thanks so much for coming, everyone. Have a great evening.